Triple C did an interview. Henry Cejudo says he's back. Now, is he joking? Is he having fun? I'm going to take him at his word. I'm going to take him at his word that he's back. Every time I have questioned Henry, which includes when he beat Dominic Cruz, grabbed a microphone. Remember that first show ever, 246 in the middle of a pandemic? But do you remember that? Remember how everything was strange? There was no audience. There was no backdrop. There was no crowd. Greatest of all time in Henry Cejudo, and he retires. I just didn't buy it. If Henry Cejudo's going to go out, he's going to go out in front of a full arena. He's going to tell us ahead of time. He's going to get a standing ovation. There was just things of it that seemed off. But he did it. He meant it. Revisionist history for me to bring this up. Just shy of a year ago. 9-10 months ago, right? So, reason I say I'm going to take him at his word is there's a few things that he said that have seemed questionable that all were real. I think Henry's back. Let's take it from that stance. He says he's coming back at 135 pounds. He's now called out two athletes. Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling. Would make sense, right? Now, I would interpret that the way that he called them out is a little bit confusing in that does he not know who the champion is? Henry Cejudo does not want to fight Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling. He wants to fight whichever one the champion is. Now, I only bring that to you because the champion is very clear. It's Aljamain Sterling, but maybe Henry didn't fully understand how the disqualification worked. And I'm not saying that to try to be funny. He's not calling both those guys out. He's calling out one of those guys unless Henry has announced that he's back but is buying himself some time, meaning I'll take on the winner of these two. Probably a better interpretation. But if I'm going by the literal sense of taking him at his word, it's not what he said, okay? So I believe that Henry is buying himself some time. That buys him about 6 or 7 months. Get to sit back, watch what happens and who wins between Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling. The question becomes, can Henry guarantee himself that he gets that fight? It's a question for TJ too. But don't make believe that Dana White is going to be so thrilled with the news that Henry's back when Dana wasn't thrilled with the news that Henry was going to leave in the first place. He wasn't thrilled with that. He respected it and he moved on. He's not going to be thrilled with that. So to act as though he's just going to part the waters, there's some moving parts at 135 pounds. Can we agree to that? We did not know until 72 hours ago that we were going to see Aljo versus Yan Part 2. We assumed we were going to see the winner of that versus Sandhagen and or possibly Dillashaw. It looks like by default of getting a rematch with Yan and Sterling, it looks like by default that instantly pairs Sandhagen and Dillashaw. That's what it would look like. But you see how fast things change in this space because all of a sudden you've got Henry there. So if I'm right in that when Henry said I want to fight Aljamain Sterling or Yan, if I'm right to conclude he means you guys go fight winner, Triple C, I'll see you later. If I'm right to mean that, fine. If I'm wrong, if Henry did not misspeak and he is to be quoted correctly, it means he is willing to take a contendership fight. That is where you could very quickly bring in a rematch with, say, TJ Dillashaw. Where you could bring in some fresh parity with, say, Corey Sandhagen. I think that it would be a very naive to assume that as a foregone conclusion that Henry Cejudo can reinsert himself and instantly go into a title fight. Even if it would make sense, even if the rankings supported it, even if you were behind it, to have a foregone conclusion, that's what I'm speaking to, a foregone conclusion that he could step in and do it, I think is presumptuous. I think there is a question there. I think that Sandhagen's got some real support behind him. I think that Dillashaw is going to need to make that walk one time, be back in everybody's mind. I think there's some moving parts at 135 pounds. I also would argue for you, everything I'm saying about 135 as it pertains to Henry Cejudo are all things that I could not have said 12 months ago roughly when Henry left. Point being, it's a much better division. The division's in a much better spot. When's the last time, guys, we sat around and argued who we want to see fight at 135? When's the last time we sat around and had a debate over who we thought was the top contender at 135. And I realize a lot of 135 pounders don't want to admit it, but there was a meaningful period of time where it just put anybody in there. Put anybody in there. Don't put them as a main event. We'll build the rest of the card. That's the way that was for a while, right? Women's division right now, 145 is in that spot. Who do you want to fight at 145? Get it done, fill it in. Don't make them the main event. We'll build something else around it. I'm just saying for you, like that's a real thing, but it's a real thing that 35's not dealing with now. Good news for 35. It's meant as a tremendous compliment to the guys at 135, which appears now to also include Henry Cejudo. But if it's to include Henry Cejudo, you then are still left with the problem of what do we do with Sandhagen? What do we do with Dillashaw? And by the way, that's not the easiest question to answer because that's not the fight everybody wants to see. Right? I mean, some of these things don't always come together. Okay, number 2 guy is going to fight the number 3 guy. Number 1 guy, the champion's going to take on the number 1 contender. They don't always come together. They got to come together in the hearts and mind also of you, the viewer. I will tell I am you. I am the viewer. If you ask me what I want to see TJ Dillashaw do, if you bring anything to me that doesn't say Uriah Faber, I'm less interested. And that was a hot and heavy topic in conversation, which, by the way, Faber was part of. Faber's been all for that, never back down, never flinched, agree to it right now type attitude. I've never seen TJ show an interest in wanting to fight Faber, and I don't know why. Is that a respect thing? They used to be together, they used to be boys, it just doesn't feel right. Maybe. I don't know. I've just never heard TJ speak on it. Is it because Faber's not the champion and TJ wants to come back into the championship? Probably more likely than the respect scenario. But I don't know. I've never heard TJ weigh in and speak on it. And it seems as though if TJ Dillashaw next career move is going to happen because of a default based on an action that took place on Saturday's card between Jan and Sterling, right? You see where you wouldn't want your life or your career determined on a default? I got to go fight Sandhagen. Okay, fine. Let's fight. Wait a minute. I have to fight Sandhagen because Jan cheated against Sterling and somehow got an immediate rematch. Because that's a totally separate story, but you're saying that's going to affect me? TJ Dillashaw, the former champion of the world, I am going to go do a fight because of something that Jan did to Aljo. I mean, do you see where you're all of a sudden you might speak up? Jan versus Sandhagen sounds like fun. Sounds like an interesting match. It's one that we would all agree, okay, whoever wins needs to be fighting for the belt, right? There's not a lot of guys, if anybody, that we all agree needs to fight for a belt. I feel as though the only person that we all collectively agree needs to fight for a belt is Dustin Poirier. I think that's the only guy that we all, hey man, Dustin needs to be in a title fight. But it would seem as though whoever won between TJ and Sandhagen for the 135-pound division, they need to fight for a title. But if you had to go fight for a title because of a default, based on an action between 2 other guys who you'd like to be competing with, it seems to me, if we're looking for big fights, if we're looking for meaningful fights, it would seem to me that you got to get Faber and Dillashaw together. I had somebody push back on me in a private conversation. They pushed back on me and said, yeah, but Uriah isn't ranked. It had me scratching my head going, is TJ? You telling me Uriah is not ranked sounds as though you're telling me TJ is. Who the hell ranked TJ? He hasn't fought in 2 years is why I bring that up. Does George St. Pierre currently have a ranking? By example, does Henry Cejudo currently have a ranking? The answer might be yes. I would be surprised and I would wonder why. Why and how? Does John Jones have a ranking at heavyweight, a class he's never fought in? The answer might be yes. But if I were to guess, and I had the foggiest idea how to find out the rankings, I would predict that John is not ranked at heavyweight, by example. I would predict that St. Pierre is not ranked at 185 or 170, or the rumored weight class he's interested in of 155. Right, that's what John is at heavyweight. It's a rumor. He's saying he wants to do it. George said he wanted to fight at 150. I don't think you'd be ranked on that. There used to be a rule, and it was more of a policy than it was ever a hard and fast rule, right? The only rule that we're going to follow with the rankings is we're going to fiercely adhere to the rules that we make up on the spot. But there used to be a bit of a policy, even if it was loose, pretty steadily followed, that if you did not fight for 12 months for any reason, injury or inactivity, whatever the reason, you were removed from the ranking. It sounds as though that's not the case, but it also sounds as though TJ being removed for 2 years is in the ranking, which would make me go, why? How? That doesn't seem to make sense, which I bring to you. I don't feel that should deter or stop us from wanting to see Faber and Dillashaw. We all as fans want to see that. We all as fans for a while thought we were going to get that, and now all of a sudden that's been very quiet. And if you go ask Uriah Faber right now, Uriah Faber's ready to go do that right now. And I believe that TJ just sees that he's got a bigger opportunity. Hey, man, I got a title fight. TJ, I don't disagree with you, but you don't now. What we did not know is going to happen, this game of hot potato and this argument with the pundits that you were going to have in the media between you and Sandhagen for who should go on to fight the winner of Jan Sterling is gone. Somehow. But I also don't think that by default, if I was the former champion of the world, I don't think that by default I'm going to love that that's where my career is going. This guy need this guy in the head, so I have to go fight this guy. I don't know if I'm going to love that. If somebody had the bright idea that I was going to go fight Sandhagen, it was going to be the number one contendership. Okay, great. I'm all on board. If you didn't have that idea until you had an illegal action between Jan and Sterling, and that therefore means I have to go do something, right? I mean, if I'm the champion of the world, I've got the right to have an ego too. I got the right to have people want my career and care about my career and instruct my career based on what I've done, not based on an action between two other guys, which, by the way, happened to be an illegal action. So now I got to go fight Corey Sandhagen for a number one contendership, okay? I'm the champion who's never been beat. I got to go fight a guy for a number one contendership because this guy cheated against it. You see where the thing gets weird, right? I feel like I'm saying the same words over and over again. But I'm trying to process and digest this, and I'm also not getting my way as a fan. My way as a fan, I'm going to see Faber and I'm going to see Dillashaw, and they're going to sort this out from 3 to 5 rounds. For some reason, I'm not getting my way.